In this lesson, we're going to learn about the number system. And the numbers that we use are actually part of a larger number system called the complex number system. And what it has is it has a real number portion plus an imaginary portion. The real number portion is denoted as A, the imaginary as BI. Now, we'll get to imaginary numbers later, so for everything we're going to be doing at the first part of this class, the imaginary portion is going to be 0. So what's actually going to happen is this B portion, it would be like if the B is equal to 0, then the imaginary portion will go away. And all we're left is with the real number portion. So that's what we're going to concentrate on now, is just the numbers where the imaginary portion is 0, so it's just going to be a real number. Okay, so in the real number system, and remember we said that the imaginary part is equal to 0, we have two types. We have the rational numbers, and we have the irrational numbers. Now, an irrational number is a number where the decimal, it has a decimal part, that decimal is never going to end, and it's never going to repeat. So if you're going to actually try to place the position of that number on a number line, you never could. Because let's say that you had an irrational number that we had rounded to say 1.43. So we want to place it at 1.43 on a number line, but actually that number is 1.4371. So actually we'd have to move it a little bit more. And the more accurate we get, we would just keep changing its position. So remember, the decimal never ends and it never repeats. That's an irrational number. Now the rational numbers, even though they could have a decimal part, they're going to be the numbers that if they do have a decimal, it's going to end, or that decimal is going to be some sort of a repeating decimal. So for example, the number 1.34, that would be a rational number because it just stops at 4. Also, another rational number would be 1.3333 repeating. And because the 3 keeps going, and we could express that as 1 1/3. So we do have an exact position for that number on a number line. That's why it's a rational number. And another way to define a rational number is it can be expressed as a ratio of numbers. So for example, 4/3, which is 1 1/3, that would be a ratio of two numbers, 4/3. The number 3 could also be expressed as a ratio of two numbers, such as 3/1. So those are the rational numbers. Now underneath the rational numbers, we have a whole other set of definitions of numbers. And one of those definitions is integers. And integers are numbers that have no fractional part. So, and they could be positive or negative. So for example, sorry about that. So they could be positive or negative. So they could be numbers like an integer has no fractional part, so something like they would be coming from the negative direction. It could be a -3, then a -2, a -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Now, the whole numbers that are integers, the whole numbers are integers, but those are the numbers that are greater than or equal to 0. So we're not going to have any negative numbers in whole numbers. So for an example, a whole number could be 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, and it keeps going forever. The definition of a natural number is the same as a whole number, except it does not include 0. So the natural numbers would be our integers that are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then keep going. The positive numbers are any numbers that are greater than 0. We do not include 0 in a positive number. It is neither positive nor is it negative. So notice it's not going to be in the positive numbers. It's not going to be in the negative numbers. Now, number means any number greater than 0. So if we just specifically wanted to look at the positive integers, those would be 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. Those are the numbers that are integers that are greater than 0. Also, then a negative number would be actually any number that's less than 0. If we want to look at the negative integers, those would be the numbers that are negative and does not include 0. So we could say, oh, a -1, -2, -3, -4, so on and so forth. Those would be the negative integers. Here's another definition similar to the positive and negative numbers, but it's called the non-negative numbers. That would be any number that is not negative. So that would include 0 because 0 is not negative. It says any number that's not negative. So that would be any number including 0. So if we wanted to write the integers that are not negative, that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. The non-positive numbers are the numbers that are not positive. Since 0 isn't positive, 0 is included in those numbers. They would be all the numbers that are less than or equal to 0. And the non-positive integers, then those would be the numbers such as 0, -1, -2, -3, so on and so forth. All right, that's it.